was the definition of a fucking creep. He had a neck beard and was always flirting with the girls, especially the freshmen and sophomores. His name is Mr. Soyanuku, and I found out he was a creep whenever a band kid randomly came up to me. I was a popular kid and said, "Hey, Mr. Soyanuku, the PE teacher is a pedophile." I was confused at him, wondering if that was true or not, but I did know that he is a creep. Then I said to him that I would be okay if he showed me proof. After school, the band kid invited me over to his house where the evidence of Mr. Soyanuku being a nonce is. When I walked into his room, it was your stereotypical band kid room, USSR flag, a good gaming PC, and anime pillows. Then he showed me the proof. He hacked onto his Discord where he found out that he was talking to underage girls and wanting them to send nude pictures. And to make it worse, he had sent his own dick pics. And he had loads of CP on there. And that he also said that in his office was next to the girls' changing room, so that he could see the girls inappropriately. After this, I told my friends, and they said we fucking knew it. And when I told them that a freshman band kid found it, they were shocked. And we also called the FBI on him. Good. His house got raided and he got fired in April of 2023. Yes. Good. I'm glad. That's disgusting. That's terrible. Sad to say, but I think there's always at least like one creepy teacher in every school. It's really disturbing. My sophomore year of high school, I had a biology teacher that always gave me the absolute creeps. Like, I was like, this guy is creepy. I don't know, like, is anybody else picking up on this? Years later, I found out he got in trouble. I can't remember what he did exactly, but I was like, oh, I'm not surprised at all. So gross. Anyway, the next story is called The Guy Down the Street. I, a 30-year-old female, used to live in a small neighborhood from ages 13 to 18. This took place when I was around 15. I spent most of my time just walking around the neighborhood listening to my MP3 player. Wow, I feel old just typing that. There was a guy around the same age as me that lived maybe 5 or so houses down. From neighborhood gossip, I learned that he was homeschooled and had been in and out of juvie due to his anger issues. He was almost always outside, and sometimes when I passed his house, he would start following me. I was smart enough to always have my music down low enough to be able to hear and be aware of my surroundings. At first, I just passed it off as he just ended up walking the same time of day that I did. Looking back, I was truly dumb. As time passed, he got closer and closer to me when following, until he eventually decided to come up right behind me. He said some truly heinous things that I will not repeat here. I mean, he was right in my ear when he was talking. I ran home and told my sister. She basically was who raised me. She told me I was lying and to stop making up stories. That's terrible. For a while, I stopped going out walking until I needed the fresh air and exercise and tried again after maybe 2 months. Sure enough, there he was and came right up behind me and started to say things again. I turned my music up and ignored him. This is what I continued to do every day, until he got tired of me ignoring him, I guess, because one day he grabbed my arm. I couldn't get away, and then he grabbed the back of my neck and told me that I should know better than to ignore him. This is where I would have punched him in the fucking face as hard as I could, or kicked him in the balls, I don't know. Maybe both. Again, I told my sister. She didn't believe me, and I stopped going out again. What a shitty sister. Like, what the fuck? 2 weeks later, I woke up to loud bangs on my bedroom wall. There was a garage on both sides stop, but it didn't. My cousin and her boyfriend lived down the street, so I called her, and she sent her boyfriend down to see what it was. Her boyfriend pulled right into the backyard and right up to the door into the garage. His headlights filled the garage and outran the guy from down the street holding a large knife. He took off running and my cousin's boyfriend followed. It was at this time I called the police. They came and took a statement, but said there was nothing they could do because other than going into the garage and trespassing, he didn't actually do anything. I never took a walk in that neighborhood again. I still wonder how he knew what wall to bang on. How did he know I was on the other side of it? How did he know my sister was gone or that my dad was bedridden and couldn't do anything? I never locked the door, so he had been in my house too now. What would have happened if I would have gone outside? That's really scary. Girl, get a gun. The thing that bothers me is that her sister didn't believe her. If my little sister came to me and told me that that was happening, I would have gone immediately and hunted that fucking kid down. And trust me, he would not bother her anymore. Like, what a shitty sibling. What a shitty sister. The next story is called Roommate from Hell. Never move in with a man or woman you've never personally known. I got a roommate from hell this way. The man tortured me psychologically when I turned his sexual advances down, then stole thousands of dollars from me over time. He even used my Amazon account to open up an account. He got some of my personal info like social, etc. as well. Once I left after calling the cops to help me leave, he showed up at the Apple store I was at, just a day after I left. Even though I left to go live on the streets, no family or friends as I was severely abused as a kid. I've been on my own since 14, so I'm accustomed to surviving on the streets for periods of time. I was a million times happier than I ever was in his nice apartment surrounded by nice things and a fancy car. I felt so relieved even just living in a concrete garage. I was a million times happier sleeping on concrete with a pillow made of a towel and a tiny blanket in the cold and heat than I ever was living there with him. He spent his time psychologically torturing me, and I don't regret leaving at all. He would bang on the wall across from mine every morning and late at night to startle me awake. He'd throw pebbles or tap on my window in the middle of the night to scare me and keep me on edge. He'd give me weird little candies and teddy bears as if we were dating. Even ordered stalkerish love items from my own Amazon account. Who the fuck spends this much on a Christmas ornament that says I'll always love and follow you? Or something along those lines. Yikes. If I'd go to the restroom, he'd run and kick his foot at the door so loudly and suddenly that it sounded like a door being kicked down. He'd steal my items if I left them alone for even a second, so I'd have no way to go out if I had plans. Then he'd put them back once I mentioned them, or when it was too late for me to leave for my plans. He kept me home this way. If I got any mail or package, he'd interrogate me. What did you order? I need to know. Like he owned me or something. Towards the end, I was leaning doors and furniture up against the door because he'd picked my bedroom lock before when I was gone. When I'd wake up sometimes, there was stuff missing or moved in odd ways, so I know he was creeping around while I was asleep. He was an absolute freak. I wouldn't put anything past him since he showed me how psychotic he was. This guy sounds like the worst person ever. If I was happy or in a good mood, he'd start criticizing and nitpicking at my body, hair, face, behavior, voice, anything he thought I was insecure about. I even developed an ED because he always did this and mocked and laughed at me when I would make or eat food. Anytime I'd leave my bedroom, he would rush out of his room to stand right behind or near me like a weird little dog that follows you around panting. He'd even piss in Amazon account without my knowledge or consent. It was the strangest thing. If anyone else had dealt with this, they'd go insane. Yeah. I still have trouble believing this stuff happened, as it was just so crazy to even think that someone is crazy enough to do this. I need a second, because that makes me so angry. I hate this man. The next one is called Almost Kidnapped in Thailand. I am a 21-year-old girl taking her first backpacking trip around the world. I only arrived in Thailand 2 days ago, and it was unfortunate as I almost got kidnapped on my first night. I went to Bangla Road, which is well known, and had a few beers at a bar, and then went to the popular club Illusion. I was having a good time dancing and meeting people. In the club I had only 3 drinks, tequila and orange juice. But at some point I realized I was a lot more drunk than I expected. Do not know if it was spiked, but I was dumb and had my drink on the table next to me while I was dancing, and it was very crowded. In total, over the space of 3 hours, I only had 2 beers and 3 tequilas. Usually that is an okay amount for me to be aware enough. I went to the bathroom and felt very intoxicated and threw up. Upon leaving the bathroom, a guy who I did not know grabbed my arm. He seemed young, and I asked him what he was doing. He said he would help me down the stairs. After we got down to the road, he dragged me down an alley and put me in his car. I would be having a panic attack at that point. I was really scared at this point and didn't know how I'd gotten myself into a bad situation so quickly. I'm very small and not very strong, so it was easy for him to take control of me. He started driving and I kept saying no, 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 and to stop, but he said, "Don't worry, I'm taking you somewhere safe," which was so scary. I had maps open and we were driving out of Patong. Finally, after some time, I started telling him I would throw up all over him in his car if he didn't pull over. This seemed to annoy him and he pulled over. The second he stopped the car, I got out and ran down the street. Luckily, there was a motorbike taxi who asked if I needed a lift, and I jumped on and told him where my hotel was. I could see the guy walking down the road after me as we sped away. I made it back to my hotel safely. Honestly, after that, I'm not going to any bars or clubs alone. I don't trust anyone, feeling very vulnerable. At least it was a lesson that I needed to be a lot more careful. Just glad I made it out okay. I am too. The world is a very, very scary place for women. I hope y'all men realize that. The next story is called I Think I'm Being Stalked. I'm in the process of applying for a new job and started contacting various places to see if they were hiring and sending in my resume. About 3 weeks ago, I got a text from a director saying that texting would be easier to keep in touch about filling out my application and setting up interviews. I ended up meeting with him twice, once to see the facility and another time for an interview, about 2 weeks ago. Since then, he's passively said things such as how pretty I am, that I would be the perfect fit, etc., but no actual updates on the job. He's also tried asking me out multiple times, but he tries to make it seem like we would just be talking about the job. I've tried to not reply as much as possible and have been ignoring him because I don't want to work with someone like that. Yesterday, he messaged me to tell me that he was sending flowers to my apartment building. That's so inappropriate. I never gave him my address directly, but it was on my application. I said thanks and then ignored him because I was freaked out. Today, he asked me if we could meet up for coffee because he's in my neighborhood. I didn't respond. About 2 hours later, I took my dog for a walk, passed by a coffee shop that is 2 streets over from my apartment building, and he was sitting in a booth right next to the window. We didn't make direct eye contact, and I honestly couldn't tell exactly if it was him. I kept walking, and he almost immediately texted me asking if it was me that he just saw chances that he was at that coffee shop in my neighborhood that close to my apartment just by chance? Was he just waiting for my response that whole time? Am I being paranoid about being stalked? Sorry if this is all over the place. I'm posting from a burner because you can tell what city I live in from my regular account. I don't think you're being paranoid. I think this freak is stalking you, and that is terrifying. I hate that. I hate that very much. The last story that I'm going to be reading is called Mid-90s Terror. I grew up in the 1990s, born in the late 80s. Same. And I remember getting my first bike and starting to explore the area in which I grew up in upstate New York. Where I grew up is much different now in the 90s. It was more rural with clusters of neighborhoods here and there. I lived near an old capped landfill, and the main road connected a lot of semis down to some factories in a neighboring town that was like a 5-minute bike ride. We also had an old Baptist church that was founded by an eccentric former hippie who was really good to the community. My dad, who was a very serious drinker, loved to fish, hunt, etc. with his friends because it gave him... My dad, who was a very serious drinker, loved to fish, hunt, etc. with his friends because it gave him an excuse to drink and kill something. But he ended up making this deal with this pastor and the gentleman who owned a pond behind the church to stock it with fish, as at the time my dad and his friends started becoming serious competitive fishers and went in on a boat, which my dad had to sell his share to eventually keep drinking. My friends and I had permission to fish there in the summer, and we would go down and swim and all that. I lived easily less than 5 minutes from his pond, and my friends and I go out there one summer day. This was around 1995. My mom had heard on the news a week prior about a wave of kidnappings. I don't remember if Amber Alerts were a thing then, so she decided to make a code word with me. She came to me and told me if anyone ever tried to convince me that they knew my mom or dad in the hopes to get me in their car, to ask them for a code word. Ours was pickles. So fast forward to our fishing trips. My friends leave before me after we sat around and actually just swam more than anything. My friend Dennis got mad because he was serious about fishing, so he and his brother left. I was alone on the road, and the road, once you get past this farm, was a straight shot to the main part of town, and our road was on the right just before the road ended. I think road was in that sentence like 5 or 6 times. I get to my road, and I'm about to turn, and I didn't notice I was being followed by a beige-colored pickup with this Cletus-looking guy from The Simpsons in it. He greets me and tells me that my mom and dad are waiting for us at this local restaurant, which I knew. He tells me that they asked him to come get me and meet them there so we can all have dinner. Immediately I thought of what my mom said, and I started getting this evil feeling like I was in danger. So I told him that my parents specifically have a password that they give their friends, and that if he was their friend, he was required to tell me. At which point he got mad and started swearing at me, although I didn't see one. But I was certain he had a gun as he started fumbling in the truck. I turned and started pedaling down my road, screaming for help and that I was in danger. He jerked his truck to follow, but I was making too much noise and was already to my house. Then he just took off. When I got home, my mom was home, and I was hysterical and asked her why she would ask such a mean friend to pick me up. I told her what happened, and she didn't believe me. What the fuck? She calmed me down, told me I did the right thing, but could tell she had a hard time believing me. She also grew up in the same small town, and nothing like that ever happened to her. What is with these stupid family members not believing their kids or their siblings or whatever? Like, why would you make that up? And clearly this person was traumatized. A few days later, a friend of hers told her a similar story about her son in another part of our town. The police were then involved, and the cops came and talked to me. I gave them the same description of the man, truck, what happened, etc. I don't know if the guy was ever caught. I used to be very bitter at my mom for not believing me, but I now understand the confusion she had. And instead of reacting, she just tried to console me and keep an eye on everything. My dad, on the other hand, was more vigilant about it and would ask me all the time when he'd take me out if someone looked like the guy or a truck looked like the same one I saw. Good for you, Dad. Good for you. I hope no other kids were harmed by him. Anyway, on that note, I hope you guys are doing great. I freaking love all of you. You're the best. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. It helps me out very much, and I appreciate it. Y'all are amazing and the best. I really hope you enjoyed these stories, and I will see you in the next